Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. Ranking Member Cantwell, my colleagues and friends on the committee, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to discuss several bills which are critically important to Alaska's future. I want to begin, as Madam Chair, you did, by underscoring the bravery of the members of the 2nd Infantry Division and urge support of its Memorial Modification Act. The Alaska-specific bills on today's agenda: the Alaska Economic Development and Access to Resources Act, the King Cove Land Exchange Act, and the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Improvement Act, all hold monumental importance to Alaska's communities and the future of our great state. Madam Chair, I'm going to reemphasize a number of the points you made in your opening statement, and I also want to acknowledge your leadership on so many of these issues for our state and our country. It's been so important having you in the chair. And I want to start by talking about the King Cove Road, as you did. As you know, Congress, and specifically this committee, previously passed legislation authorizing life-saving emergency access road for the people of King Cove, Alaska. Yet due to a callous decision made on Christmas Eve by the Secretary of Interior, Sally Jewell, these Americans have been denied reliable, life-saving access to medical care, something that most other Americans take for granted. Since Secretary Jewell's decision in 2013, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, there have been 52 life flight evacuations, most recently last week when an expectant mother experienced complications. Of these, 17 have been conducted by the brave men and women of the U.S. Coast Guard. This road has been needed for decades. It was needed in 2009 when Congress first provided authorization. It was needed in 2013 when Secretary Jewell turned her back on the people of King Cove, and it is needed today. And I strongly urge the committee to act on this. As this committee knows, Alaska is a very resource-rich state. Indeed, if it were its own country, we'd rank in the top 10 of many of the most important minerals in the world. We have a proud tradition of responsible resource development while upholding the most rigorous environmental standards. Unfortunately, some areas of my state also have some of the highest costs of energy and some of the highest rates of poverty in the country. Among the promises of Alaska statehood was the agreement that Alaska could support itself through responsible resource development while also helping meet the country's energy needs. Today, the federal government's restrictive land use policies and layer upon layer of burdensome regulations have broken this promise. These bills today start to turn this around. The Alaska Economic Development and Access to Resources Act would jumpstart Alaska's economy and touch every corner of the state by increasing opportunities for responsible resource development of our abundant resources. Over the August work period, like many of you, like all of you, I traveled back home, and I was in Southeast Alaska and saw firsthand the importance of one provision of this bill that you already spoke to, Madam Chair. That's the Land Exchange for the Mental Health Trust Authority. Now, it's important to recognize the Mental Health Trust, which was established in our Constitution, serves a population of Alaska's most vulnerable citizens, those with disabilities, and the land exchange in this bill is critical towards achieving the responsibilities towards these citizens in the most environmentally sensitive way. This bill would help the country, and it would also help some of Alaska's most remarkable and courageous citizens. Since the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act passage in 1971, it has been amended many times. In this legislation, S3273, is a combination of many small efforts that aims to resolve many local issues, some of which have been around since the passage of ANCSA. This collection of provisions does not represent monumental issues for Congress, but are life-changing for the citizens in many small Alaska Native communities that are affected by this bill. Finally, Madam Chair, I would like to just mention one other provision that's very important in this bill, which I care deeply about, and I know members of this committee do as well. This is a resolution for Alaska Native Vietnam-era veterans who missed the opportunity to apply for a Native allotment. Now, the Alaska Allotment Act of 1906 enabled every Alaska Native to apply for an allotment, 160 acres. ANCSA extinguished that opportunity in 1971. But many of these Alaska Natives were serving in the military in 1971, some in Vietnam, some in other places, and they missed the deadline. So all this bill is trying to do is to give people who were serving their country at a time when, let's face it, a lot of Americans were avoiding serving their country, the opportunity to finally apply for the Native allotment that was rightfully theirs. And I believe that just in terms of pure fairness and taking care of our veterans, that this is a critical provision that hopefully every member of this committee and every member of Congress can agree on. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to these important bills.